So why don't we hand it over to our artist, Daura, coming in from Brazil. So, yeah.
Quite a long way. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Danielle, for this lovely introduction, and thanks everyone for making it. My name is Daura Campos. I guess I'll start sharing my screen while I make my personal introduction. Can you see it well?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Daura Campos, she, her pronouns. I'm Brazilian and I'm based in Belo Horizonte, Brazil, also known as the Krenak land. And this is my artist talk. So I wanted to give you some preview of who I am as a person and my artistic journey as well, just because that informs my work really deeply. So as most kids, I guess, I was really drawn to art, drawn to drawings and making silly sculptures and all of that. And that was something that was really a fountain of joy of sorts for me. But as I grew up, that was something that was discouraged, and career in the arts was not something that was really viable or presented as viable for me. I'm originally from a region called Steel Valley in a mining town called Ipatinga, but I moved to Belo Horizonte, where I live now, in 2016 to study medicine because that was the career that was presented to me at the time. Moving from that small town to the capital of my state, I was much more exposed to art and an art community, much more so than in a small town. And I started to see that being an artist was actually a possibility. And after 4 years in late 2019, I quit medical school to go to film school because I didn't have access to art school still, even in a capital city. And that was when the pandemic hit. So it was quite a transformative time for, I guess, all of us. And during that time, I only had shot film and maybe once or twice in a trip with a friend that I did abroad. And all of the images came out ruined. And for me, that was heartbreaking because, they're not perfect. But at the same time, I felt like that those images captured my experience. It felt quite like moving image. It was really grainy. It looked like memory to me. And still, I was heartbroken and I thought, okay, I need to make this perfect. And that's when I started to dive into portraiture, just photographing those around me, my close-knit community in my hometown, because at that time I had to move to be close to my family because they're elders. And I still didn't find myself quite attached to those portraits. As you can see, this is kind of a mind map of where I was at the time. And I kept going back to the ruined images and thinking, how can I make this an art practice? Because that was the pivotal point where I just switched careers wise and was thinking what I could do with my life. But being quarantined, how could I photograph others if there are no others to photograph? And that's when I found out about a thing called film soup, which is what you're seeing here with the 35mm film. And this is done mostly by hobbyists, and my first results were quite striking to me. And I was like, okay, let's dive into this aspect of photography and make images that are ruined on purpose, because that's where my head was at the time. And sorry, let me go back. And I started to think about a lot as well the relationship of photography and painting. I am primarily a photographer. I forgot to mention this, but I quite enjoy working with the 35mm film. I feel like that's the medium that I use to make all of the other projects. They might be photography, moving image, or painting. And I just wanted to give you some more insight into how that process goes, because when I usually tell people, oh, I photograph and then I cook my film, because that's the premise of film soup, it's in the name. People often ask, but you cook in a kitchen, in a pan? And that's quite literally it. And I wanted to show you how that goes. Let me know if the sound plays or not, please. Different textures around my house. And then I cooked my film using everyday ingredients like salt, lemon, chamomile tea, and I also used some household supplies like soap and detergent. Each one of these elements affect the solution's pH differently and cause different degrees of damage to the film, so I have to be very careful and keep my eye on how the film reacts. What's at the crux of my work is that my images are survivors, as most of us are survivors of different things. So this is a snippet of how that process works. And at the time, like I've said, I didn't have access to as many people as the pandemic progressed. And I thought how to make work without people. And the idea that I had was to photograph my own space, which was, well, this space that you're looking at now. And what I photographed were the walls, my bedroom, sometimes the landscape. I'm facing the window, so what I'm seeing through the window, and just working with what I had. And at the time, I was thinking a lot as well about the relationship with what I was cooking the film with and what the images were. And just being more intentional, because I could, after a while, figure out more, I don't know, alchemy details, in the sense of if I use beet, the images will be purple. And if I use green tea, ironically, the images turn out yellow. So after figuring those steps out, I wanted to think about, what does green tea represent in this project? What does beet represent in this project? What does whatever else represent in the project? So that's when I started to take this into a more artistic practice and a process-based practice. This was my first project about using this process, and I'll just show you a few images. I won't show the complete projects because that will take too long. But this project, I went with a friend of mine, Luisa, to a neighborhood that is almost a gated community in the city where I'm from. This city was built literally to serve the steel industry. So the steel, I don't know, moguls planned the city accordingly to their classes. And there's a specific neighborhood that's called Castelo, which translates to castle in English, where the higher ups were designed to live. And in this neighborhood specifically, you had, for example, if you're not a higher up anymore, or if you want to move there and you're wealthy, because things changed and you can't be just like, oh, you can only live here because you have this job, they still have kind of a voting and a vetoing process of who can live there. So you have to apply. So it doesn't matter only how much money you have, but it matters if the people that live there find you deemable, or find you like that they could be associated with you. And mind you, this is not a small city anymore. Now they have like 500,000 inhabitants. So it's not like a close-knit community in that sense, but that prevailed. And my friend and I were thinking about just this class associations, relationships, and as well who in their mind's eye of the people that live there could live there as well. And it became quite clear that we wouldn't be those types of people that would be accepted. So we went there and shot these images in a space that was previously used to perform like weddings and hold other events, which my parents did get married in this building. And thinking about the relationship with queerness and with sexism, and specifically relationship between women, we were thinking that no way a queer couple could live there, which is true, and no way a woman-loving couple could live there, which is the case for my friend. And we photographed these images there with the ingredients that we could find from the soil there, and as well ingredients that we cooked like in our day-to-day lives, and build this relationship story where this is the first image, this is the second, and this is the last. There are a total of 5 images, but I built it out this way. So when you look at the first image to the last image, you can see kind of a build up to a date or to a meeting with someone. And in the end, this person is left to themselves. And here again, the person is getting ready to meet someone, but both images, she's always alone. And we were thinking about closeting and all of those relationships when it comes to that. This was 2021, I forgot to mention, I guess. And this was the first project that I had this space to show in, sort of. It was still the pandemic, so everything was shown virtually, but I had the opportunity to show this on a billboard, which to me was really significant because it was, I mean, many people saw it, and there was a relationship between just, it's supposed to be an advertisement, but it's not quite really. And when you go to the website, you can read about the project and just the idea of people that are really far removed from my reality. I mean, LA could see this project and maybe find some connection with it, which turned out to be the case. I would get like a few messages, a few DMs saying, oh, I just saw this billboard, and it felt quite unique to me. Then, as the pandemic progressed, you see that 2021 was the most productive year because I had quite nothing else to do. I was thinking about the relationship with the domestic space itself. I've been involved in feminist organizations and like grassroots in Belo Horizonte since I moved here. And we've been accompanying a high rise in domestic violence cases. And this was also true for the rest of the country. I believe at the time, the domestic violence cases rose by 35%, which is quite a lot. And just thinking about the fact that now people are now confined with their aggressors or with their oppressors to be safe from the virus, but home is in a safe space while the cities also isn't, so they don't really have quite a place to be safe and comfortable and within their own skin. And for this, I photographed it in my wall itself without all of the art and worked that as a blank canvas of sorts for the images to grow. I didn't really have an idea what it would look like. I just wanted to see if I could do this process in a white canvas, which wasn't what I was doing before. And it turned out that they looked like bruises, which was quite a special surprise for me and also served the project. And I moved with this idea to now photographing specific places in the house. So I photographed the mattress, which is the first image, which to me holds a significance to just sexual violence as well, and other spaces that are commonly everyday spaces that you use. So you have a sink and you have just like 2 doors, but you kind of don't have anywhere to go. And I was still using the bruise palette, which you can see here. It's like the reds, the purples, the blues, and some like yellowish skin. But here they get more dreamy and more dramatic because to me, it kind of represented a bruised view, as if the person was like looking through their trauma. So this was the premise of this project. I'll also mention that at this time I started studying, like I've said, I went to university and I started studying about the relationship between photography and painting. And I was being told without questioning or like reading a lot about camera and how the camera changed how images were made forever and how it represented the truth. But because it was like a machine-made image, there were no relationships between the image itself and its creator. And that really pissed me off. So I started to making images that were more abstract and kind of going against this idea, but still having some reminiscence of like what the space actually was. And the following year, I had the opportunity to show this project with another artist called Grace Wang at Gallery 44 in Toronto. And my idea behind this was to just transport my wall, my blank wall at the time, to the white gallery wall. So we used vinyl because it gives a hold to the effect. And we made them really large because we wanted people to be able to see the details and also be confronted by the larger image. And I also used the window space that we had and plastered adhesives that I color picked from the colors of the images. So here you can see a little bit that it kind of bleeds into the gallery floor, but as the day progresses, it bleeds into different spaces and different locations, which I thought gave a nice feel to the whole idea. And Danielle, please let me know how I am on time. Okay.
You're doing fine.
So last year I went full on abstract and just again going back to the idea that photographs don't really have to be representational, and the idea that the meaning of the image is more in my process, in the process itself, than the final result. And I kept getting in touch and following up with other people that were in domestic violence cases, in domestic violence scenarios. And I've been a survivor of like different sexism and sexual violence as well. And I was thinking a lot about how a world without that would look like, and how just coming out of that experience, how the outlook of the world for us changes and the relationships we build and all of that. And I wanted to kind of create this realm without violence, but through the process of being a survivor. That is why in the video I mentioned that I see the images as a survivor, because the film itself goes through a very destructive process. I can't recover the images as they were shot, and sometimes the film comes back blank because it's been destroyed beyond repair and it's just like the transparent strip. And I was thinking about not necessarily a traumatic experience, but a transformative experience that would change how we approach our worldview and just in the end building a whole new world. I forgot to mention the previous project name was Secret Visibility, and the one before that was at What the Luck. This one is Once Upon a Pink Moon, because at the time I was really into astronomy and I found out that the pink moon was the moon that opened up spring, which was really significant because it's a literally like a transformative time in the year where everything is blooming, and the images came out quite pink. So I was like, okay, we'll move to the pink moon. And these are the first few sets of images that were very much like amorphous. I kind of saw each blob as a person after a while. And the following set of images came out very dreamlike, landscapey for me. I could see mountains. I could see again mountains, a river. I could see a lake. And in the last image, this was a surprise. I could see a thumbprint. I don't know if thumbprint is a word. I keep thinking about pink print because of Nicki Minaj. But this was done in the processing and wasn't me because I don't have a dark room at my disposal. So this was someone else doing it. So I could see literally someone imprinting onto the image. And that was really significant for me as well. And you see pink everywhere. And this year, I had the opportunity to show this project with two other artists in Iceland. I kept going back to the idea of transporting my wall, because these are my walls, to the gallery wall, but I wanted to make it more 3D and more interactive and more dreamy. So what we did is that we cut out a few of the blobs from the first couple of images that I showed and had them exist in the space and kind of bleed into the space and have people interact with them. Just because, again, I used vinyl, and we also used, I forgot the word, so I'll go back to it. I'll come back to it later. And people could just touch them. They couldn't rip it, but, you know, it's pretty much in the space itself. And we also plastered the more like window-like or landscape-like images to the walls without interacting with the actual windows. So it draws some confusion of sorts to those around it. Now, I've just made this timeline so you can see how I've been edging towards abstraction for the past 3 years, where I started with, like, you can see that it's a person, it's a bouquet, and you can see it's a mattress, but now you can no longer really see what the original image was. And that comes back to the point of being transformed by an experience or an environment or something. This year, I had the opportunity to collaborate with a London-based brand, and we really kind of kneeled into the idea that now that the images are survivors, people who wear them are symbols of their own survival. And I created the images doing the same process, and we used those as just the background for the actual designs. I was quite pleased with the results, and it's really, I have, like, I think you can see a scarf here. I have one of them, and it's quite interesting to just see others wearing something that I've made in my kitchen and have them connect with the message either way. And this was a much more broad interpretation of survival rather than, other traumatic experiences, just you being able to represent your own experiences. And now I'm kind of doing the work backwards, where I'm creating paintings using film as my paint. So I've been removing the film emulsion and painting with that. The film itself, I have been gathering from different film labs because they don't have the space to just archive everything. And some people don't come pick up their films after a while. It's usually like 3 to 6 months. And I've been also receiving donations of film from other people who either don't want to have those images in their space, don't want to be associated with the people that are in the images, and have gone through heartbreak. And I've been creating paintings from that. I'll show you a couple of videos of how that goes. This is very TikTok-y because it was a TikTok. But you can see that I'm removing the emulsion. This was the first one I've made. I've used bleach, but now I've been trying to figure out different ways where I can just make actual paint from the emulsion. And you can see that the tones are ironically pink again. And the emulsion, after a while, I figured out that it has kind of a logic behind its layers. So it's usually first yellow, sometimes if I'm lucky green, then we get to pink, purple, and then it's black. So you see in the next one that it's much more yellow and purple, because that's when I was able to kind of figure out that a little bit more. And those are quite small. I actually have them here and I can show you. They're like 8 by 10 or 10 by 12 at their most. Here. Oh, and something that happens is, let me go back to the other slide so you can compare. The paint actually fades, so it looks like this now. And I've been just thinking about how to work with that over time and have an image that maybe doesn't exist after a while. But again, the film is still the primary material. This is the other one, which I'll show you how it looks like now. Also, this is quite a toxic process because of the bleach. So I have to wear gloves and masks. When you see me without a mask, it's just for the video. Because I didn't know that the first time around, and I was basically the other day without a voice. So this is what it looks like now. You can see it's pretty much has faded away. And I was thinking how to make this more sustainable, because at the end I get just like plastic film and I'll archive it, but I had the idea of scanning them after the process, and this is what they look like after removing the different layers of emulsion. And the original images are no longer here, which is great for me because I did get the film with the, how do you say it, with the condition that I wouldn't scan the images for myself, like to have the actual people and their resemblance. And now you don't have that. So I've been just, making up on making up on making. So this is them. And they quite, to me, refer back to my work about, you can see the human traces upon the film. And sometimes you can see, like here you can see a building, but you're not quite sure what's going on. There's these blobs. So it still aesthetically fits what I've been exploring. These are just preliminary scans. And that's all. Thank you so much. And you have all of my contact information to just message me, please. I'll stop sharing. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Daura. I am so intrigued with your work. As I mentioned earlier, I find it almost hypnotic. And in many ways, and I know this, I find it almost like this wish unto the world for a better future, particularly the Once Upon a Pink Moon pieces and the wearables that you're collaborating with. I was super excited too to hear about the work in progress that you have and how you are thinking about the actual photographic film as your media for creating paintings, and then how you're still printing those images. And then I was also thinking about the exhibitions that you showed of your work and how they seem almost, they're more like installations in a way, even though there's the photographic painting, so to speak. You're also really thinking about the space and how light, how the conditions of the space will affect the understanding of the work. I'm curious to know if maybe you're thinking of more investigations of installation or immersive environments. And yeah.
So thank you so much. Ideally, I always say this whenever someone asks, they might be like overdoing it. I don't know. Ideally, I would show in a domestic space or a gallery that resembles a home or where people can navigate through it and create a domestic space within it. So maybe have a bed, and the bed sheet are actually the images. We have wallpaper that are the images. We have a whole, I don't know, installation that people can understand that it's home, but not feel comfortable enough in it. And for the previous projects, that's what how I would approach it. Because I think that's a very peculiar feeling, like knowing that you are home, but you are not, or that you cannot go home in a sense. So, or how we imagine home, at least to be.
Yeah, and echoing what you were also saying about during the pandemic, where everybody was supposed to be at home to stay safe, but home isn't always a safe space for people. Yeah. Let's open it up to questions or other comments. Does anybody want to say anything?
I will.
Yes.
So thank you so much for the generosity of bringing this work here. And I think the quietness is because of it's sinking in with all its meaning and process. The sharing of the process is so a part of it for me, to see this unusual experimental way you found to make the work, and how the process really adds to the poetry of the story of narrative and subject aspects of your work, and gives it a very genuine, alive, and embodied kind of presence to something that we're contemplating. And just the way of the art having the transformative effect of something so beautiful in its aesthetics, all of them, the beauty is really, there's the alchemy for me in the art, is how you're working with something culturally hidden or pushed aside as a central topic in the day-to-day life, but very much present in our world and our lives, whether it's our own experience or in our neighborhood or our people we know. And that taking that pain of the reality of something that is hard and painful to face or experience, and moving it through this whole creative transformation that then comes out in these spaces of light and beauty and new. And I also just really love your language added to it, to not just talk about the issue and the kind of violence and violation that is a part of our world and our histories, but to bring in the imagining and the dreaming and the vision of a world without that kind of human suffering. And so that whole cycle into something future and visionary, I just find really rich and deep and expansive in your work. And the joy of seeing these paintings that are photograph processes on the clothing really moves me too, because the wearing the new, the wearing the what has been turned into the creative, and it's motion and life, and just there's something I love about that stage of it as well, coming onto the body in this other kind of new way that is back to the body, but with that story and history subject, back to the body, but a claimed body that has this color and this life and this newness to it. All of it it's very moving to be, and so interesting how TAAS brings these incredible artists and art processes into our lives. I just feel really grateful.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you so much. I mean, it wasn't always like that. Like I've said, I was more prone to try and get to the perfection. And I realized that I don't care about it. And, I was in a place where I wasn't able to explore what I wanted. And now that I can, why to stuck myself into another box? And I was getting a little bit of pushback, even in the Secret Visibility project, hearing a lot about like the negative topic that it talks about, and that people don't really want to be confronted with that. And when I went into the Once Upon a Pink Moon, I had a mentor tell me, which I thought was so brilliant, that I had to smuggle the message in order to get access to certain places. And that's how I did it, just by, when you look at the image, you're not quite sure what it is about. So the text is there to aid you. And you think, oh, it's a beautiful, sometimes I got accepted once into a painting exhibit with that, which is technically not painting. And the viewer is not quite sure what it is about, or maybe the jury isn't quite sure what it is about. And they also have that leeway of sorts when dealing with other organizations to just say, oh, this is a like beautiful work or whatever. But the message is there at the end of the day, which is how I started to even think about using more positive language or approaching this, like the specific topic, as a transformative process, as to, okay, this terrible thing has happened or continues to happen, but if I'm alive, how do I move with that vision of the world? Because I have to move somehow. And that's what I kept thinking. So thank you so much for your comment.
Just opening it up for other people to comment or to ask questions.
Make a few comments, but you're a hard act to follow, Karen, so I'll keep my comments brief. Daura, thank you so much. Your images are compelling and beautiful, and your message is so important. I was really touched when you said that your images are survivors. And in sharing your process with us, you shared that not all the images, not all the film came through the cooking process. I think that's really important that you shared that with us. So thank you. And I also just want to say that I loved the City of Good Neighbors billboard access. I love the irony of that. And I love the relationship between that and the work that you were doing about with your incursion into that castle. Just very profound, deeply meaningful, and it's really inspiring to see your work. Thank you for sharing with me today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. I'm so happy.
So Daura, I follow Daura on social media. And one of the things that I've noticed recently is that you're extending your exploration of how to understand film as an artistic medium. So could you talk a little bit more about some of your experiments and your explorations? For instance, I saw you dunking it in the ocean. So what else is happening?
Yeah. Actually, the dunking into the ocean was someone at TAAS that suggested to me. It was Marcela Vieira, which holds share sessions. And I came to her with the Once Upon a Pink Moon. And she said, how about, because I don't know, the process of film soup, it's so timed and it has to be so precise because, like I've said, I don't want to lose all of the images. And I have to do like those recipes. I have like a recipe cookbook of sorts to do that. And she was thinking about the relationship with control and that as well, because I'm relinquishing, is that a word? I'm relinquishing control, but I'm also controlling others aspects of that. And she said, how about you do a film soup that's just time moving through the film? And at that point, I was going to the beach and, large body of water. So I was like, okay, let's do that because we need water anyway. And my partner was with me, Jonas, and they helped me just pick up the water and everything. And I added the film to just a simple cup filled with ocean water and let the water dry. So we'll see how that goes because I didn't have control over anything besides just putting in a cup and photographing the space itself. But I'm starting to think more about how to have the film in the landscape and that landscape mean something. So something is so vague, but for example, like I've said, I'm from a mining town and that has just really drastic environmental issues that are related to that, and just environmental damages as a whole. My mom has her master's in just like ecology, so I grew up hearing a lot about that, and she grew up researching a lot about that. And I've been just thinking about ways to how to pick up things from the landscape itself and see how that interacts with the images. And my guess for the specific project is that in my city at least won't be like, it will be very much destructive just because of just like industry waste and all of that. And I wanted to see like environmental that is a little bit more, I'm not sure, less damaged or without as much pollution, what it would look like. So the ocean was the closest thing and the easiest. I think this was a long-winded answer, but hopefully that helped.
Not a long-winded answer. It was great, and I'm eager to see what variations you find between different landscapes. And it also makes me think about how people think that they can treat the land, that they have dominion over it, and that also relating back to ideas of domestic violence, violence against other people based on how they present in the world. It
Yes.
also is so relevant.
Yeah, and just thinking about how, of course, since I'm the one doing it, how I relate to those spaces. So for me, the beach is a space that is very much calm and something that kind of, I'm a water sign, I'm a Pisces, so I love water, and I just like get really energized by it. I feel really calm. So just thinking about my relationship to that space, in relationship to my relationship, I'm just in relationship over and over again, to my hometown and to maybe the place where I grew up or the place where I used to go to school. And, you know, then making us all think about our relationship to those places and maybe getting the opportunity to make something collaboratively with other people across the world.
I'm a Pisces too.
See, that's why we get along so well.
I also want to give a shout out to the result of the colors you get and just the different ways you get at those colors, whether it's these kitchen elements of tea or the, you know, coming off the film, just is your color results. You're such a colorist, and I keep seeing you, but then I see that like, oh my gosh, look at that painting behind you. What is, and because it's now that I know your images are not a conventional approach, a result of conventional materials in painting. Every time I would see your work now, I'd be full of the curiosity of, I wonder what she used this time to arrive at that, and that you're getting such a palette of vibrant and full range of color. And I wonder if they are inner. Do you understand them as colors you court or choreograph or cultivate based on things you like or things that you're familiar with around you in a color palette, or symbolic and metaphoric? But I'd love to hear you just say a few things about your color, because the color is really effective and memorable.
Thank you. Yeah, for the first one, for the what they look, the primary colors I can show again just so it's maybe easier to visualize, were yellow and blue. Let's go back all the way back. And those came out of the ingredients that I had in hand. So this wasn't as planned as what it looks like now in my other projects, but I had the idea of creating a two-color story. And there's a specific moment in the story where the two characters meet, because there's the romantic interest of the primary character. And that specific color was when I had to really try hard, which came out green because it's yellow and blue. So really basic color, I don't know, planning there. But as I moved forward, I had to be much more mindful, because when you think about like bruises, I did a little bit of a research here. You can see like in the bruising process and how colors look over time. And the images didn't came out as like colorful as this. So in post-processing, I had to kind of push them to get there. And in the other images of the same series, the background, I had to just mute that and have it black and white, so the actual colors would be much more like precise. But in this project, since I had like the trial and error of the other project and the trial and error of just figuring out film soup itself, I was able to kind of start to guess, because now I knew green tea makes yellow, and I knew that beet makes purple. And I keep going back to those two ingredients because they were the actual ingredients. And just the rest is the alchemy of the film itself. And I learned over time as well that I need to have some kind of base to counterbalance the damage. So water, it's a whole try and error thing. And I was really into like everything that you could find on the internet about it, because it's not something that it's like academic in the sense that there's books about it or anything. So I was really like on Tumblr figuring that out, and on like different blogs. So yes, this was the first one that I was more sure what it was going to look like then, because I had the other ones and I was like, pink, what makes pink? And at the time I had different shades of red, even in like paprika, and that interacting with the other colors make pink. So it was like, I feel like a witch doing it, because I have to just figure it out what's going on inside something that I don't have no idea what it will look like. But thank you so much. And just to answer the actual question, I feel like I'm a colorful person overall. Like my space is very colorful. I have everything that I can color code, like my Nintendo Switch is green and purple. My bed ring is purple. When I was growing up, my parents were building a house and I had the opportunity to decorate my room and bathroom. And my bathroom is fully purple. So it's purple marble. The walls are purple and like lavender, which I still connect with. So I've always been this way, and I just had the opportunity to explore that with the process, because it just brings out color anyway. And I've been slowly figuring out how to add the colors that I like the most, which is now here you can see like blues and different shades of purple, and this is like pink and really like lime green. And this is just to cover my kitchen space, which is there. So don't feel like it's always like this. Thank you for your question.
Daura, you should write the book.
I should write a zine at the very least, I think, because I just have too many recipes that don't go anywhere.
Oh,
thank you. We'll see.
yeah, I think, yeah, you're like part witch, you're part scientist, you're artist. They're all kind of the same thing in many ways too. But it would be, yeah, you should write the book.
Thank you.
So we have just a few more minutes before 1 o'clock, and just seeing if there's any other thoughts or questions for Daura.
Yeah, Daura, I really like your project makes me think about contradictions and contrast, because like domestic violence and beauty is not something connected together. But when people look at the color and they have to, you make an effort to make the message came across to the viewer. And that also made me think, who is the viewer, whether they are the victims or whether they are someone aware about this issue. So I imagine you have an artist statement or give them a title to know about this. You want them to see that. And I think experimental photography has a very long history. I will be very curious, why do you use 35mm film instead of a larger film? Like a large sheet of film, you can actually soak in ocean. But that seems like a very particular decision you have made from the very beginning.
Thank you. Yes, so I would first thank you for the contradiction, because that was something I was going to say. Even like in my statements, I'd say that the process itself is like currently destruction, because I do have to be careful with the process and care for the film. So there's a whole process of just washing it and letting it dry and timing all of just like I can destroy it, but to a certain extent. And I really like this idea of just two things being true at the same time, and people having to just hold space to that, and without just being like, oh, destroyed equals bad, or this experience equals like life damage or whatever else. And for the 35mm film, this might be a bummer of an answer, but it started because I didn't have money to buy a digital camera, because photography to me was like something that wasn't really part of my life. And I was going on a trip with a friend, and I wanted to just have those memories without my phone, just being able to do something more mindful. But I couldn't afford a digital camera, and like a film camera was like $60. And the film itself was at the time, now it's not that anymore, sadly, but it was like $5. So I was like, I'm a broke college student, so I'll just use that. And it was just a happy accident that the images didn't turn out well, and I was kind of stuck with the medium. But I do see working with, for example, like medium format film as well, is just like I need to figure out the process, because the 35mm canister kind of protects the film. So let me grab one here. This one is the one that went in the ocean. This canister protects the film, and it gives me more leeway to do some of the experiments. But if I went to the medium format, since there's no canister, it's just a little bit of like coating with the paper itself, that would just be a whole new research. But I say that I'm stuck with it, but just because I don't feel like, even now, 4 years later, I don't feel like I've explored like the whole aspect of it in my own practice.
Thank you for the answer.
Well, Daura, thank you again so much for such a wonderful talk and insights into your process. And I feel like you have not exhausted that research either. I think that there's so much more that you're going to find with it, and I'm eager to see where that goes. Yeah, Leland, 100%. Yeah. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We have another TAAS talk next week at this time, so please join us if you can. And just again, thank you so much, Daura, for your beautiful work, your thoughtfulness, and the big topics that you're addressing with such compassion. So
Yeah, beautiful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. You were a lovely crowd.